Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for taking some of your evening tonight to join the Second District for our February community meeting. It has been since November. We took a little break over the holidays, but we've got a great agenda tonight. I'm going to wait just a couple minutes as people continue to log on. But again, welcome, everyone. If you have questions for any of our presenters, feel free to drop them in the chat. You can also send them to Sven or myself if you're not comfortable asking. Or you can raise your hand and Sven will unmute you so that you can ask. But that's our general protocol to make sure everyone gets a chance. And I think we've got a great lineup. We have Chief Edwards, our school board member, Mariah White, our new city auditor, Brad Ali, and a General Assembly update from Kathy Bircher. She is currently in a meeting right now, so she is will be joining us as soon as she gets out from that commitment. But I'm going to give it about 2 more minutes. Again, thank you for everyone for being here, and we will be starting shortly. All right. Again, thank you, everyone. And just as a reminder, all of our meetings are recorded. If you want to go back and view them again at a later time or share them with your neighbors or community, please do. We really try and get an agenda that addresses issues that residents are talking about or have questions about. All right. Welcome, School Board Member White. I'm so happy to have you here. And I say let's go ahead and get started. All right, thank you everyone for being here tonight. And Sven, throughout the evening, we'll be dropping resources in the chat. We are so glad that you joined us. Got 2 more people hopping in and out of the waiting room, Sven. And then I think we can hand it off. Sven, are you able to? There you go. Okay. Excellent. Well, thank you everyone for being here. I'm going to hand this over to Chief Edwards. And Chief, I think this may be your first meeting with us since becoming our permanent chief. So welcome. We're really pleased to have you here and appreciate your commitment to Richmond.
Well, thank you. And thanks for the invitation. Happy to just kind of give a brief overview and then answer any questions that anyone has. So a couple weeks ago, we did our year-end press conference where we discussed 2023. And I think the theme for 2023 is, as far as the Richmond Police Department is concerned with crime, is that we saw really good success in our violent crime reduction. In fact, we were down 7%. We did see a slight uptick in murder. So we had 59 in 2022. We had 64 last year, but that is consistent with where we are on our threshold. One of the things that we like to do is talk about the 7-year trajectory. So this is the 7th year in a row where we saw a reduction in violent crime. The murder rate we've averaged about 66 for the last 7 years, with the outlier in 2021 where we had 20. This is all for the city. And then, but our non-fatal shootings were the lowest. We had a 26% reduction in non-fatal shootings last year over the previous year, and that was the lowest since 2018. And we're really proud of that, because what we know is that all of our non-fatal shootings are effectively attempted murders. They're just either bad aim or, the skill of the surgeon at VCU Medical Center or one of our other great hospitals where we've saving people, but the intent is the same. Another thing that I mentioned is I'm supporting legislation from former council member Mike Jones. He introduced House Bill 22, which is making it illegal to possess what are commonly referred to as Glock switches, but they're better. They're also, the technical term is an auto sear, and what it does is it's a device that you can put on the back of a standard semi-automatic pistol. It probably costs $3 or $4 to make. You can even make them on some of the 3D printers, and they turn a semi-automatic pistol like the one that I carry and that all Richmond police officers carry, and turn it from that into a fully automatic machine gun, which is obviously very concerning. We seized 50% more this year than we did the previous year. So we're seeing more of them. Our officers are encountering them more. It's still a relatively small number. So we seized 18 last year, total of 12 the previous year, but we are seeing an uptick. One of the big concerns that we have in our city is fatal crashes. So last year, we saw an 11% reduction in those fatal crashes. We had 25 people killed in the city that we investigated. Either sometimes they were pedestrians, but sometimes they were in a vehicle. Sometimes they were on a moped. But these are traffic fatalities, and that's down from 28 the year previously. But I still want to say 25 is still high when we look at that number. And it's some reduction that we're pleased with, but we're not resting on it. A big part of that is, we believe our role is to more traffic enforcement. And I know that I'm sure there are people on this call that they're very concerned about traffic. As when I go to any community meeting, it seems that is what is a very large concern. So with our staffing, we've had to make some very tough decisions on where we're able to put officers. One of the good things that we were able to do last year, though, that I think is making a significant difference, is we were able to hire 2 former retired motorcycle officers they came back to the city, they work part-time, and all they do is run radar in our areas where we're getting complaints. So we saw a 13% increase in summonses last year, all of our traffic summonses, and with a big increases in speeding tickets, reckless driving tickets, seatbelt violations, and regular signal or regulatory sign violations. So those are if someone runs a red light or runs a stop sign. Coupling that, we just went live this week with our safety camera program. Many of you may be familiar with that. We've started at Patrick Henry and Linwood Holton, our 2 first stops. The next 2 will be Lucille Brown and River City Middle School. These are safety cameras that that during school hours, they will collect license plates of people going 11 miles an hour over the speed limit. And we will be we have to have a sworn police officer reviewing every one of those tickets with the camera footage. And when the officer reviews it and confirms it, they'll mail the individual a civil ticket. The goal of this is to just slow people down, particularly in these areas around our schools. We've had very close calls with some of our kids being, almost hit on many occasions, and we've had to take steps. So this is another program in an effort to get folks to slow down. So I talked about some of the good news for the city. Some of the bad news is property crime. So property crime is way up. And when I look at the 2nd Council District's crime, a lot of it mirrors it, except we had a bigger reduction in violent crime in the district. So we had 23% reduction in violent crime, but we still saw an increase in property crime in this district. And much of that in this district is driven by shoplifting. And the #1 location where we're experiencing shoplifting, 56% of all of our shoplifting comes from ABC stores. And the #1 store, a quarter of all those come from one of the stores that are in the 2nd district. So it's the ABC store at 1217 West Broad Street. A quarter of all of our shoplifting occurs there. So we have a partnership with ABC this year. We're going to be really focusing on that area with ABC agents and Richmond police detectives to try to identify the multiple offenders. So we are going to really push that. If you follow us on social media, you'll see something that we do very consistently is put out the pictures of people that are doing this theft. So we call it a lifter lickers program, or liquor lifters. Yeah, the liquor lifters. So and we get a lot of tips from that. And we also talk about people once we've made arrests, because what we want to do is dissuade it and arrest the offenders that are the most prolific. The other challenge that we're facing in property crime is theft from motor vehicles. And the biggest issue with theft from motor vehicles, and this isn't as pronounced in the 2nd district, but it's still a challenge, is firearm theft from those motor vehicles. So last year we saw a bit of a reduction, but 644 firearms were stolen out of motor vehicles. and almost all of those are unlocked. So people are leaving their firearms in cars, and thieves are going around and pulling on door handles and often firing them. And there are two very concerning incidents that occurred last year where we had two young people shot with firearms, both accidental, with guns that were stolen from cars. So we had a 3-year-old boy that was hospitalized after he accidentally shot himself and has sustained very significant wound, and he is going to have lifelong challenges. And when we found that gun and traced it, it came back to a person who left it unlocked in a car, and his father was charged with that weapon and is going through the court process right now. But it's that little boy has a lifetime of challenges. And then a very famous case with a 13-year-old boy that died. He was accidentally shot by a family member with a gun that was stolen out of an unlocked car less than half a mile from where the incident occurred, and within 24 hours, it is being used to kill one of our teens. And this, when I looked at that report, the owner of the firearm said he just accidentally left it in his unlocked car. He went to bed. He returned, woke up the next morning and found his car in disarray, and he noticed his firearm missing. And when we traced that weapon, and we had to meet with that man and say, we found your gun, but the terrible news is it was used to kill a teenager. So that's one of the more serious sides of this theft from motor vehicle issue. And finally, the third issue that we're experiencing in Richmond, and it's not unusual to Richmond, it's in many cities throughout the country, is motor vehicle theft. If I were speaking to this group maybe 2 years ago, I would be talking about the fact that we're having if you want to avoid your car being stolen, you need to leave your car locked. You can't have an extra spare key in the glove box. You cannot leave it running to warm it up. Those are pretty much the only ways cars were being stolen until 2022, when there was a infamous TikTok challenge that went over social media where it showed people how to hotwire specific models of Kia and Hyundais. So in 2022, we had about 930 or so motor vehicle thefts, and maybe 8%, 9% of those were Hyundai and Kia. Last year, we had 1,578 motor vehicle thefts, which is a 68% increase, and over 50%. So out of that 1,578, 848 were Kias or Hyundais. 731 were every other make and manufacturer of car. So what we're trying to do with that is, obviously we're utilizing technology to catch thieves. So we have license plate recognition in various parts of the city, and we're getting a lot of hits, and our officers are finding those stolen cars and arresting offenders. But we're also trying to work on the deterrent strategy. So we worked with Kia and Hyundai. We worked with other insurance vendors who provided us with these free wheel locks. I think they used to be called the Club. I don't know that that's the manufacturer, but it's a steering wheel lock that you can put on your car. And we're giving those away at all 4 of our precincts. All you have to do is show that you're a city resident and that you have a Hyundai or Kia, and an officer will give you one for free while supplies last. But we have, at last count, several hundred left. And we've been giving those out because at this point, that seems to be the only thing that on a defensible side, we're able to stop. So, that's one of our biggest challenges. One of the real highlights, though, in last year with theft from motor vehicles, as many of you know, we used to always talk about catalytic converter thefts. So catalytic converters were being stolen by organized groups. And the problem for us as a police department is we would be finding people in possession of these things. We would see them, they were obviously hacked off with some sort of tool. Our officers would see someone riding around, and we'd see 10 of them maybe in the floorboard of their car, and we would have no recourse. There was no way to prove, because there was no VIN on those catalytic converters. We'd have no way of proving that they were stolen. So we took several steps. One of the steps was we started spray paint. We started we partnered with Midas of Richmond, and they would put special spray paint on the catalytic converters to be able to let scrap dealers know that they were stolen. And the biggest change was the law change, enabling us, if we see someone with a catalytic converter and they didn't have a proof of sale, we could charge them, and they would almost have to prove that they had the right to have that catalytic converter. So if we see someone riding around with a catalytic converter that is not attached to their vehicle, we have the ability to charge them. That law changed in July of 2023, and we've seen a 73% reduction in catalytic converter thefts in Richmond. And when we speak to Henrico, Chesterfield, and Hanover, and this was a problem that was, unlike the violent crime, which is they don't see a lot of violent crime in the counties. This was a crime that was occurring all over equally. So Richmond wasn't any higher than Hanover County or Henrico or Chesterfield. They were going where the cars were. And so that's kind of where we finished. Good reductions in violent crime, still challenges with property crime, but we're utilizing a lot of techniques to try to address that this year. We're continuing with our community engagement series. So every month we'll either have a community walk, and we'll have a pop-up event in an area that's experiencing crime. So we'll transition through the sectors on the walk. So there's 12 sectors in our city. So we'll pick a different sector every month. And the second time that month, we'll pick a pop-up event, which is about a 2-hour event in an area experiencing crime, where we have essentially a party for the community. We sometimes bring in other partners. When we went to Southwood last year, the Richmond Kickers came out and gave out about 250 soccer balls to the kids. We bring our horses and motorcycles and drones out for the community. And the goal behind that is so that our community gets to know our officers when there's not crime scene tape up. So that's kind of what we're focusing on. The other thing that we're doing that we're really excited about is leveraging technology to be more effective and efficient. We've opened our Capital City Intelligence Center, which is a real-time crime center. We've hired a manager. We have some analysts in and out of there right now. It's what we call a soft opening, but we've still seen some success with some of the technology we're using there. And we're just really excited about that, because it's no secret how short-staffed we are, but we believe that by utilizing technology, we're going to be more effective and more efficient with suppressing crime in the future. Another thing that we did, we're always trying to give our officers the best training to try to use force properly. So we had all of our officers last year go through something called ICAT training. It's an acronym for Integrating Communication, Assessment, and Tactics, and it has a critical decision-making model. We put all of our officers through this 2-day school, and it was scenario-based. And what it's designed behind, it's actually pretty interesting. The program was started by American police officers going over to Great Britain to learn how they encounter armed people who are not armed with firearms. So in Great Britain, the officers don't have guns, but by and large, the general population doesn't have guns. They still are encountering people with edged weapons, with blunt force weapons, and they have to learn certain techniques to avoid using deadly force. They don't have the option of using a firearm. So the training focuses on how to put yourself in the best tactical position so that you're not finding yourself in a situation where you have to use deadly force. So we're very happy that we were able to go through all that training. It was a big undertaking by our training academy, but we feel like it's worth it, and really pleased with that. Some of the other things that I'd like to talk about that just happened today. We had a very busy day today. So in the 3,000 block of, well, let me start with the 2nd district had a very serious crash today. So there was a VCU student, age 21, female, who was walking in the crosswalk and was struck by an individual. She has what's considered life-threatening wounds from that crash. There were pedestrians. She was a pedestrian. Other people stopped and rendered aid. The driver fled in his car, so he didn't stop. It was a hit and run. We were able to track that person down. After about 30 minutes, we found his car and placed him under arrest for felony hit and run. And we anticipate additional charges. But he's a man from a 71-year-old man named Garland Childress from Sandston. And we were able to place him under arrest. But the 21-year-old victim is doing a bit better, but she still is gonna have a long road ahead of her with rehab. Because this car was moving very quickly at the time when it struck her. So that happened at West Broad and North Lombardy at about 8:15 this morning. And some of you may be aware, we had a robbery on Broad Rock. On the 2000 block of Broad Rock, as officers were responding to that, another robbery shooting came in about in the 3300 or the 3000 block of Broad Rock, so about 10 blocks down the road. Officers were able to respond through what we believe happened during that robbery is the suspect entered there. One of the managers attempted to intervene and was shot during that encounter. And our officers, through use of technology, were within 45 minutes able to find the car. We were able to find both of the suspects who were involved, recovered valuable evidence, and we're going to charge that person with the murder and the robberies. So the speed in which we were able to get that person in custody so that no further Richmonders were put at risk, I think are very proud of the work of the detectives and the officers in Second Precinct today. They really all came together and were able to address this issue as quickly as possible. So I think that's it. I hope I didn't go too long, but I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chief. Yeah, the crash on Broad Street was really horrible. And the frustrating thing is we keep adding more enhancements, but what do you do when someone has the green, they're doing what they're supposed to do, walking safely through the crosswalk? Obviously there's more information to be had and heard about the driver, but I'm glad that he was apprehended so quickly. I'm wondering if you could take a moment before we take questions to welcome our new captains at the 3rd and 4th precincts.
Oh, I didn't see they're
Say
both
hello.
on. So
Yeah, actually, I believe they're on.
Acting Captain Scarpa has taken over. He was formerly the executive officer at the precinct, and now he's running the day-to-day operations and doing an excellent job. And I think Captain Leno, are you on? I don't see his name, but Captain James Leno is now in charge of the 4th precinct. He is a veteran police officer with the Richmond Police Department. Most of his time has been spent, his last 10 years were in the homicide unit. So he was the captain in charge of that. And now he's bringing some of those same skills to bear on patrol operations in 4th precinct. So he's really doing an excellent job.
Terrific. I really appreciate that. Well, we do have 2 other guests. So we'll open up. Does anyone have a question for Chief Edwards or Captain Scarpa?
And Counselor, I did see in the chat, School Board Member White did ask what number that Carver Elementary may be in the priority listing for speed tables. And then I know also ultimately it is planned to be in the program for the photo speed enforcement as well. So Chief, anything you can speak to on that?
So it looks like we are allowed to have 13 locations with a total of 26 cameras. I'm sorry, and Carver is so it's number 9 on the list of 13 locations. So we anticipate very shortly going to Lucille Brown and River City, and then and the challenge for this is not only for us, because we have to have a police officer confirm everything and review it, but what's really going to be different is for our court system. That's why we're slow rolling it in consultation with our judges. But once we get a handle on these 4, we anticipate going with the other 9 all at once. So that will be Swansboro Elementary, Richmond Technical School for the Arts, formerly George Wythe, Francis McClenny Elementary, Huguenot High, Carver Elementary, Bouchaw Middle, King Middle, H.J. Blackwell Elementary, and Westover Hills Elementary. So those are locations that were picked by traffic engineering based upon crash data and concerns. I know there's other schools that are seeing some speeding, but those were the first. And So we'll have what these first two are called the pilot locations. The first expansion are next, those next two, and then the second expansion will be all at once. And you know, we're excited. We've had to hire 4, like I mentioned about the 2 officers that are riding motorcycles that are retired. We've had to hire 4 that are currently going through training right now that are retired officers that will have all their police powers, but they will be doing nothing but monitoring the cameras, not monitoring them, but monitoring the responses from the camera company that sends us the video clips and confirming that the tags are right and that when we run the tag and it comes back to a certain car, and making sure that it's mailed out properly, and being able to testify in court to the technology.
Got it. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And Ryan, I know you're excited that we are on the list finally for Carver. We have a lot of offenders going down Lee Street, so this is good news.
And we anticipate what the goal is. Obviously, we anticipate a lot of, for the first 30 days, they will get a warning ticket. And then we'll get a good sense of how many are coming through, with the goal of what studies have shown is it lessens over time, because most of the speeders, it's part of their routine. It's not going to be first time folks driving through. So we hope once they get that first warning or even a ticket, that it affects the behavior. It's not a matter of just trying to get money. In fact, you know, there's no guarantee that it's going to be a generator of revenue, and hopefully it just, what we experience is just folks slowing down and keeping the community safe.
And Keith, we're going to have some folks speaking to the General Assembly side of this a little bit later, but can you speak to why we're only able to do this in school zones at this point?
Well, it's school zones and work zones, and that's just by design, what the statute allows for us in the Commonwealth. But I did hear that there is going to be additional legislation to try to add. I think this will be a good test, though, to see how successful we are to be able to look at that, because it's not just the 28 and 20 or the 25 people that died in our city last year. Like the young lady today will have life-altering injuries because of this crash. So there's many more people that are surviving these crashes, and it's speed related for the most part. There's certainly concerns with driver inattention, with looking at their cell phones. There's certainly concerns with DUI and driving under the influence of drugs. We've had a very difficult we still don't really understand how the proliferation of marijuana is affecting drivers at this stage. There's not a great test for it to determine, the same way you can get a test for blood alcohol content that gives you a very specific measure of how intoxicated a person is. So it's still in the early stages of that, but we are seeing something. And whether it's the cell phones or whether it's speed or driver inattention or substances, I think it all gets better, and the survivability goes way up when speeds are reduced. Just going the speed limit.
100%. Well, thank you so much for that, Chief Edwards. Captain Scarpa, thank you for joining us as well. Really appreciate your service, and there's some good reporting that you brought us tonight, so thank you. And for those that haven't been following along the chat, Sven has dropped a lot of the information that we've already discussed when it comes to like the full report that Chief Edwards gave earlier this year, as well as where the precincts are located in those boundaries. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our RPS update from School Board Member White. Thank you for joining us, Mariah.
Yes, good evening, and thank you for having me. Tonight, I'm just going to give some updates. If someone has any questions or concerns, you can please put it in the chat, or you can contact me by email, and I will be sure to answer your questions. As you know, that RPS, we are in budget right now, so we're in the last sessions we have been working on budget. Our next meeting will be on the 20th of February at 6 o'clock at Martin Luther King Middle School. For everyone who has children or just want to be informed, President's Day is on February the 19th, so school will be closed. And I'd just like to say congratulations to Bobby Vincent again and Catherine for our 3 speed bumps on Lee Street. So please slow down, although we do have people who are still doing U-turns in the middle of our speed bumps, but hopefully that will stop pretty soon. Also, we have VCU, who is now doing our crossing for us. They are crossing guards. We have 2 of them out there every morning, and they leave at 8:30. So they are really covering our hubs, our bus stops. We have 4 different schools there pretty much that cross in and out, just not Carver. Carver makes the 5th school. So I want to give you a rundown. Also, Fox Elementary art auction is February 24th from 6:30 p.m. to 10 p.m. It's going to be at the Common House, so get your tickets because they do go up. I think it's like the next one will go up in the middle, almost at the end of the date, it will go up again. So please get your tickets. But I want to give you some updates. Our schools are doing great in the 2nd District. I did go by on Friday and the Friday before, so everything is going well. We will be changing the alternative school. It's just going to be that the ownership will be RPS. So my focus is really on that. And the reason why is because I feel it's a behavior school, but our children need also to be getting the education and learning that they desired. And before they go back into their school, they need to be tracking on that on their comprehensive school. When they're at the alternative school, they're pretty much just that behavior. So when 45 days come, it's really no difference, but it is a little bit of learning loss because the learning is completely different than their comprehensive school. So I'm pretty much working on that school. I'm there every Friday, just checking out different things. And I know the plan is coming, but I'm waiting to really view the plan. Carver, we'll do each school here. Carver has support from some great volunteers that has been coming there. The Kiwanis, Richmond's Kiwanis has been there every other Monday. They rotate out 45 minutes from 8:45 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. They take a small group of students and they read with them. And they go back and forth. Sometimes the students read and sometimes they read to them. The next Monday, we have FLOVA volunteers, and that's the First Lady of Virginia. And she has a ladies group that also comes to Carver, and they do the same exact thing. And so Carver has some good volunteers there that comes to see them. They also have a millennium called Millennium Minds for Men of Color. They come every week. That's Dr. Carton Gould at VCU. That is a group that has 500 men in it. So young men, and they actually do Carver and they do Fox. So they come every week to both 2nd District schools. So we greatly appreciate that. The next thing I want to give you is an update on Fox Elementary. And I'm talking about the real Fox Elementary, not Clark Springs. I just want you to know if you live near the area, what they're exactly doing at this moment and about the permits. So the updates for Fox as of today, the permits dealing with the mechanical and sewer water utilities passed, ready to be issued. The building, the zoning pending is approved. They have parking lot revisions in hand right now. The building review and fire department has been approved. The electrical is pending approval of the second round of submissions. So they had to resubmit for the electrical. So we're pending approval on that. The gas and plumbing, the second round updates needing to be finalized by Quinn and Evans. And the sprinkle as far as long as possible. So we will need shop drawings from the subcontractor in the future. So on site, you might be hearing some noise at night, more so than in the day. The last bit of abatement is being done, and mold remediation is being conducted. Once the basement is complete, demolition will start. The chiller is getting removed next week. Again, the chiller is getting removed next week. And this came from Dana Fox today. I asked her all these questions, so I knew that I wanted to make sure that I give Fox a rebuild update for everyone. And the last and final thing that we're doing, and I just want to thank Congressman McCullen because she had a great idea. She's having, she introduced to the elementary and middle schools to collect Valentine cards to show support for all our veterans. And that's a dear thing to my heart because I'm a veteran and I know how veterans love Valentine's card. So we appreciate that. And if there is no more questions or concerns, I will conclude my briefing. Anybody have any questions?
I have a quick question, Mariah. Do you, well, two things. One, did Dana indicate why there was going to be construction or noise at night? And then two, can you just give a quick update on the Dreams for our RPS schedule? Or maybe Sven, can you add the schedule into the chat for us, for folks who haven't participated yet in that master planning? Thanks.
Okay, well, this is what I've heard from the neighbors across the street. There's quiet in the morning and at night, they hear some, I guess, bumping and whatever is going on. So I needed to ask that, and that's when she told me that they're doing abatement in there. That's why the noise is going in there. They're still trying to clean up in there and knock down a couple things. So that's what they're hearing at night. With the Dreams for RPS, you did ask me that. Someone asked me a question today about that, and they are actually planning. They're going to plan it at one of the churches on Monument. So we're in the process of doing that, and they asked me which day will be a better day. So I'll have to get back with you, Dad. I'm sure they're going to advertise it, but it's funny that you asked that because they did just came out with that this morning. Wanted to know what church would be a good church to actually have it that's near everyone. And I
Okay.
did mention the church that we used for the classrooms for the Ion Monument.
Okay,
and
great. Yeah, just let us know when that's decided. And I just want to remind everyone, you do not have to have a kid in RPS to care about RPS, to participate in Dreams for RPS, or to volunteer at RPS. When I go, Mariah and I just miss each other at the Binford now Dogwood Middle School event. And there are a lot of people that you would know that, you know, aren't current parents. It's a great time. You will see people you know, and it really does have an impact. So appreciate these updates, Mariah, and we will share out in our newsletter the information as soon as the other second district Dreams for RPS meeting gets scheduled.
And I just have one more thing, since you said you were talking about Dogwood Binford, just to let everyone know that next year, Dogwood Binford will come over to the second district. Fifth district has been doing it for the last couple of years. Ms. Rizzi has been the school board chair for that district. It will come over to second district after November.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. White?
Hold on.
Then did you have someone?
Oh,
have a
that was
question?
me. I'm sorry. Someone was knocking on my door. This is Chief.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
All good, Chief.
I thought I was
All right.
muted.
No worries. Could have been a lot worse. Could have been a lot worse. All right. Well, thank you, School Board Member White. And I think we have next on our agenda, our new city auditor. And I just want to give a warm welcome to him. He comes to us from Broward County, Florida, where he did a lot of good work there. And Mr. Ali, we're going to kick it off to you. You've got a good audience of 18 folks here. Maybe you can give an overview of what your priorities are here, and then also indicate how, you know, citizens or, you know, residents can interact with the audit department and find past audits. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Good evening, District 2. It's a pleasure to speak with you tonight. traditionally, nobody ever wants to talk to the auditor. So this is a nice change of pace, and I'm very happy to be invited here. My name is Riyad Ali, as Councilwoman Jordan just said, and I'm Richmond's new city auditor. I've been in this role for approximately 2 months, a little less than 2 months, but I've been in the auditing and the investigative field for over 15 years. At the City Auditor's Office, our mission is to promote open and accountable government through independent audit services. Our goal is to help city departments become more efficient and effective, to identify cost savings, cost recoveries, and revenue enhancements for the cities, and of course, to strengthen the city's internal controls. And the way we do that, of course, is we perform financial, operational, performance, contract, and even forensic audits of the city and the city's books. Now, we do this through our very own risk assessment that we perform every single year, and we're actually performing that in the process of performing that now. We also do that through requests we may receive from council, city council, like Councilwoman Jordan, as well as requests we may receive from city administration. Moving forward, we're really going to try to utilize data to help us determine what needs to be audited. So, as the chief said earlier, that you're trying to use data to find problems and to nail the problems down. That's what we're doing here at the City Auditor's Office. We'll use that data to identify real problems in the city so we audit efficiently and effectively. But one of the other ways I wanted to mention that we can perform and that we do plan and perform audits is through requests from city residents just like you. For example, we recently received a request to audit a construction project from a resident, and we're currently doing a risk assessment of that construction project, and we're considering adding it on to the next year's audit plan. So we may audit that, and that, of course, again, came in from a resident. So if you guys have any requests for audits, any questions or any concerns, you can reach us at askcityauditor@rva.gov. That's askcityauditor@rva.gov. I do want to hear from you guys. I want you guys to reach out to us so we can see, what's going on, what the problems are, and kind of see patterns and identify risky areas in government we need to look at and audit. Now, with regards to the meals tax program, I know that's been a big question that we've been asked about, as it's been, of course, in the media and throughout the city. We performed an audit of the meals tax program last in April 2023. Now, of course, that's less than 1 year ago. So we currently do not have plans to perform a full audit of the meals tax program, as if we did that right now, that would simply lead to the same findings and the same recommendations that we made less than a year ago. There are currently, since we've done that audit, I believe we had 7 recommendations, and about half of them were implemented, and we were able to close them where the city implemented those changes, and some of them haven't been implemented as of yet. And the plan is that they will be implemented once the city launches its new payment management system called RVA Pay. So our plan, of course, is to re-perform an audit of the meals tax program once RVA Pay goes live, which is scheduled to occur in approximately a year or less, depending on how fast they can get it launched. And once it goes live, there's a couple, months of activity using the new payment system. We're going to go ahead and audit that meals tax program all over again to ensure that things are operating effectively and efficiently, and we're not going to have some of the issues that you've seen in the past. Now, City Council did request that my office do perform a review of the meals tax program, a very limited review focused in on delinquencies and delinquency notices. One of the issues, as I'm sure a lot of you are aware of, was that a lot of account holders weren't made aware that they were delinquent, and they had a delinquency that would grow over time because they weren't even made aware, from the city that they had that delinquency in the account. So what we're currently doing is we're looking at all accounts who are currently delinquent, and we're identifying the number of accounts and the amount of that delinquency, and we're checking to ensure that there's nobody who's currently delinquent who hasn't received the notice, right? So the goal is that everyone who's currently delinquent at some point has received a notice and made aware that they have that delinquency with the city. That review from council was requested with high priority, as you can imagine, and we're performing it expeditiously in cooperation with the finance department and with city administration. So we believe we'll have that information over to City Council hopefully very soon, and to City Administration, and so we can get a handle on the number of delinquencies as well as ensure that everyone receives notice. So again, I'm going to be here if you have any questions, any concerns, anything you guys want to ask me. I will be here. But if there's anything a little more personal that you don't necessarily want to say, feel free to reach us at Ask City Auditor at rva.gov. That link is also on our website. And one additional thing I think worth mentioning, if you do send us an email to that about any particular topic in the city, we may not be able to help you. A lot of times people request an audit of their account or there's something specific. Individual things we can't necessarily audit. What we do is refer you over to the department or the director or someone who can help you out. But we like to see the complaints that are coming in. It's very helpful for us as we can identify patterns of if 10 people are sending us an email and complaining about the exact same thing. We now know that there's a risk in the city, is a concern in the city, and that is something we absolutely want to add onto our audit plan, or maybe even launch an immediate audit into that problem right away. So again, please email us if there's any concerns at askcityauditor@rva.gov. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And again, your department is a critically important one. I think people don't actually understand all the work that has been done to date through the audit department. And we look forward to more good work to come. I did see a hand raised. Dave Cantor, if you want to send, can you unmute Dave?
Yep, Dave, you should now be able to unmute.
Okay, thank you. Good to meet you, Mr. Ali. Also, I'm a reporter at VPM, so I will try not to monopolize everyone's time, but I figured this would be a good chance to ask you a couple questions. So you said sometime early next year, the meals tax audit would be fully redone. Is there?
Yeah, we do plan once they launch, the city's able to launch RVA Pay. Again, there's no real point in doing it again and having the exact same findings and recommendations. RVA Pay, once they launch it and they're processing payments through RVA Pay, we do plan on redoing the meals tax audit again for various areas that are using RVA Pay, because we want to be sure that RVA Pay is working efficiently and effectively for account holders. So we do plan on at some point, and we just also finished the personal property audit right before I came in to the position. Both of those audits are going to be redone in the future, in the near future, once RVA Pay is fully utilized for those functions. So I can't say within the next 6 months or in the next, we want to give it we want it to be implemented. And then we want to give it a little bit of time to work and process and work through the kinks, and where we can perform a real audit of a couple, at the beginning, to ensure things are working properly. So we can't say exactly when. The goal is probably in the next year, maybe later on, once there is some time for it to be implemented.
Got it. And I meant to have one bit of housekeeping. When we get to the Q&A, we like to allow people to each have a question, and then we'll move on to other folks, because sometimes we get stuck on one person and other individuals might like to ask the same question or have a different take on it. So Dave, I'll unmute you if you have a follow-up to that reply, but otherwise I'd like to make sure there aren't other people that have a question. We will come back to you once we make sure everyone else has had a chance to ask their first question as well.
Yep. And I did just get in the chat, School Board Member White did have a question, and then Dave, we can come back to you.
Yes, Mr. Ali, I do have a question. I know that you said you sent out all the notice of delinquencies. And how do you know that those delinquencies, based on they were large amounts of money, that they are actually correct?
Yeah.
Is that going to be redone over to see, something to balance out to know if those figures are actually correct?
Yeah, so the focus of this audit is essentially it was a request from City Council, and the focus is essentially to ensure that if someone is delinquent, they are made aware of the delinquency. I can't speak for city administration, but I do know there's a process where they're going through and reconciling accounts and ensuring accounts are accurate, and then they have their process to review accounts that are submitted and work through that process for accuracy. And if there's anything that should be credited, they're working through that process. Our particular objective of our review, as we were asked to do, is just essentially because one of the root causes, as we all know, was the notices weren't sent out. We want to be sure that if you do have a delinquency, you were immediately made aware of it. Now, of course, in the audit that we do, once the system is up to date, all of, it's a full audit of the entire program, how it's working, the numbers that are coming in, the amounts that are due, etc. But this particular review that we were asked to do is just to identify if anyone is delinquent, but they haven't received a notice from the city.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ali.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And then this comes, I see this question and comment a lot. I just want to make sure everyone is crystal clear on this. City council is adamant when we've had briefings from administration that restaurants will be made whole if they were charged penalties, et cetera, fines, fees, that they should not have been. And because it really has been a process that spanned years. And I know Sen and myself have tried to help businesses here in the district that, we were told, no, I'm sorry, this is just not possible. And I'm very happy that now we have, I think, a city attorney that is taking a different interpretation. Whereas we've been told, no, this isn't possible. The new city attorney has a new reading on it. And, of course, I'm grateful for the businesses who came forward and didn't give up on this and continue to put heat on it. So there is more work to be done, but the city will be held accountable, and we will make sure that folks who did pay out of, because they felt like they had no other choice, even though they didn't think they should have been fined, that we will go back and revisit each of those accounts. It's not going to be a quick process, however, because you're going to have to review each account. Thank you. So are there any other questions? Yes, I see Mr. Wider has your hand raised. Thank you. I hope I said your name correctly.
No, you haven't, but I will.
Great.
It's Weeder. But okay, I have a question. The $30+ million surplus from last year, what was the source of that revenue?
So that is a question. I started less than 2 months ago. I have not looked into that piece of it. Again, those are questions we can look into. We are looking into, of course, all aspects as we move forward. But unfortunately, I cannot provide you the answer tonight.
Okay, I asked the question because that says to me that the city was overtaxing us. So it would be good to look into it.
And Larry, thank you so much for that question. And Riyadh, thank you for your work digging into some of that information. I'm gonna post in the chat once I can find the link where you can find the ACFR, the Annual Comprehensive Financial Review document from this prior fiscal year that demonstrated it's not quite a $30 million surplus. It was about a $12 million surplus. There was some reporting to each of those numbers at various times, but the certified number is about $12 million. We have run surpluses for many years over the last number of fiscal years. And that is actually a budgeting best practice to run a surplus, not a deficit. That's a position we don't want to be in. But Larry, that'll give you a more comprehensive view into what the revenue sources were for that surplus. I can tell you that about half of our budget is made up of real estate taxes, but obviously meals taxes, ALM taxes make up a large portion of that as well. So once I find that, I'll drop that in the chat, and then also happy to follow up offline on that.
And again, from accounting perspective, in the ACFR, there is required supplementary information that shows you revenue by budget to actual.
Thank you. Any other questions for our new city auditor? Or otherwise, we'll circle back to Dave. All right, Dave, I think you have the floor again.
Okay, thank you. So, I realized you said a couple months ago, so this might be too much information in a single question. So I think there are about, and this is according to the health district, there are about 1,000 restaurants in Richmond, plus or minus. In the meals tax audit that you referenced from last year, 490 businesses out of roughly 1,000 apparently got notices for delinquent payments. So like at this point, we just have like the finance department doesn't know how many people are in arrears in my head, this is a relatively, I also have no accounting background, but this in my head is a relatively simple thing for them to deduce, I guess. Not true, false? What do you think?
So we started this review. Literally, we're able to start it up on this week. I believe that should be a relatively. I agree with you. It should be a relatively easy question to answer. That's why I believe we could complete this audit fairly quickly. The number of delinquencies, it's in the system, of course. There's issues with the accounting, the Munis, the system that's used. That information is in the system and is runnable. Now, determining who received notice or not is more of a little bit of a more manual process that we have to do, that we are working on to see who, because that the notices aren't built into the system the way that I believe. Don't quote me on it, but RVA Pay, where they're going with it in the new update. It is more of a manual process to determine these are the delinquencies versus these are the ones that have received the notices.
Thank you for that answer. And then just because it is, I would say directly related to this, one of our businesses that we have been trying to help with this issue came forward with a legislative, fix for what they thought was one of the main reasons things got so derailed, which is to make sure that a tax payment is credited to the most current payment, current bill. And that legislation did not make it through the General Assembly. However, it is making its way through City Council, and it has the full support of administration and council. And I believe it's up for a vote at our next full meeting, Sven, is that correct, on the 12th? So again, some of our best solutions come from the residents and businesses that are impacted by these issues. So we're working to try and fix this. We don't want people who paid erroneously or got fined erroneously, to not be made whole. This is a top priority, and it is. We're making progress on it, and I'm sorry it's not been faster.
Yeah, again, just adding on, a lot of it is a manual process, and finance, and they're working on it. I've been their ear constantly. It's being worked on. There's not, we say something and forget. It is worked on. They're working very hard in the finance department on these issues, get out these notices, reconcile these accounts. It's something they're absolutely working on every single day. A lot of it is manual.
Yes, and Sven has put the information in the chat for the paper that we'll be voting on. So I do not see our General Assembly presenter on yet, but Mr. Ali, I really appreciate you being here. And again, folks, reach out if you have questions. There's a lot of really good information on the auditor's website, and we will continue to keep everyone informed as the meals tax issue gets sorted out. There are some also other very meaty audits underway for the year, and all with the goal of making the city more transparent and more high functioning.
Yeah,
so
thank you again for inviting me.
Yes,
again,
thank
the
you.
email askcityauditor@rva.gov. And like you mentioned, visit our website. Our reports are on there. There are some very good ones upcoming. And you can pay attention to there. You can read what we're working on, what we're doing, and see what's going on. Thank you so much, Councilwoman Jordan.
Excellent, thank you. And in the absence of Ms. Bircher, Sven, do you want to give the legislative update? I believe you caught up with her this afternoon.
Yeah, absolutely. So folks, we were going to be joined by Kathy Bircher. She is the City Council's lead lobbyist at the General Assembly. It is, however, during session. We're in the midst, about halfway through the 2-month state legislative session right now. And so she very likely is caught up in a late night committee meeting. And so that is the nature of the beast. We have a full suite of legislative and budgetary priorities that the city and City Council put forward last year. I'm going to drop the link for that in the chat so that you can take a look at it. It's a lot of the things that we've talked about tonight, right? It is transportation, it is housing, it is climate, it is schools, public safety. And there are a number of bills that are going to be of some interest to folks on the call tonight that are still in process. And also already, unfortunately, some that we were championing that have already failed to pass this year. Chief amongst those, and Councilor Jordan, obviously jump in at any point on any of these, is the charter. and that has been now a multi-year process that started with the Charter Review Commission to put forward a report with recommendations for changes and updates that we wanted to make to our charter, all of which has to go through the State General Assembly for approval. The first phase of those changes was carried in a piece of legislation by now delegate and former Council President Mike Jones. That bill was carried over in committee last week until the 2025 session. And so what that means is for the next year, our charter process, at least at the state level, is on hold. Councilwoman, do you want to stop there and go over that a little bit more?
Yes, so obviously very disappointed that our charter revisions did not make it out of committee. No one's charter changes made it to the floor for a vote because the writing on the wall was that they would get killed. So live to fight another day, and we will be reconstituting our committee. Very grateful for the folks who worked on it already that are, ready to continue working on it, because there's a lot left to do, particularly when it comes to discussing our foreign government. So not the outcome we wanted, but you just never know what's going to happen at the General Assembly. I would not have picked this one to have died in committee, but it did. And we will just keep on working. There's always the next session to try and push something through again, but stay engaged with it, because these are important changes that the community really, put a lot of effort into. And I don't want to see us ignore that work.
And folks, just because we are, and you know what, with that, without further ado, Kathy Bircher has hopped on the meeting, and I'm going to go ahead and get her situated to present here. Ms. Bircher, thank you so much for taking the time to hop on. We were actually just getting into a brief preview of where things stand. We did just cover the charter briefly, but again, that you are running a million miles a minute right now. So thank you so much for hopping on.
Well,
Yes.
I apologize.
Thank you.
Well, good to see you, Councilor Jordan. Thank you, Sven. I'm actually sitting in in Delegate Jones's office, like outside of his office. I was in another meeting here, and he's like, just, you can use my space. So I'm probably bothering his chief over there. Ralph is still in his office. The fine delegate has left for the evening, it appears, unless he's still in committee meetings. So good to be with you all. And are you all good with me just kind of giving some updates and overviews? And perfect.
Yes, I would say jump in after charter. I don't think we need to hit charter because we just discussed it.
Yeah, so we are about at the midpoint of session at crossover, which is next Wednesday. Next Wednesday, bills have to go to the other bodies, all the bills that pass. And so we are in that frantic portion of session, which is why I'm not even kidding with Delegate Jones possibly still being in committee. Just lots and lots of bills having to get through the committee process. And that means subcommittees and then the timing to get them to full committee. So it's a little bit chaotic and frantic. We have this is a long session, but as you all probably know, Virginia runs a really short legislative session. Although over the years we've become more full-time for sure, but we get a lot done in 60 days up here. So we will, over the course of the next few days, be in kind of wrap-up phase for bills. I'll go over the legislative priorities for the city in just a second to let you know where those are, because we're having some really good luck with some really important legislation. So that's important. We will very quickly next week start looking at budget. The House and Senate will release their budgets on Sunday, the 18th. So we'll get an indication of, what that funding looks like. Obviously, we had the governor's introduced budget. That's the starting point. But the House and Senate each get their shot. I have predictions on some things and mainly related around that we have Democrats in majority in both the House and Senate. So I would anticipate the budgets not being dramatically far apart, right, Ralph? I'm teasing. I'm trying to find what I can out of Ralph. Not being dramatically far apart, but they're going to be different, and we'll have to work that out. So that'll be where the focus really turns. And on that note, there's some really, really big budget priorities for the city of Richmond. The biggest one from a cost perspective, and I'll dig into the priorities now, is the combined sewer overflow, the CSO project. The governor, as you all may know, put $100 million, and we've gotten state funding of $150 million, mainly through federal COVID dollars, and the city's portion of it. The governor had in his previous budget $100 million for the city. the budget was negotiated, and this was the really delayed budget at the end of last session. That money fell out of the final budget, and so wasn't included for the city. We had hoped to see the $100 million. We'd asked for it. The city needs, and I have to say for our folks at DPU and all of the folks in the city that are working on this project, they have really looked at innovative approaches. The original cost for the project is about 1.3 billion. It has come down, and Councilor Jordan, make a face if I'm given a number that is inaccurate, but it's come way down, and it's still huge. It's still in the $700 million category. And so the city is looking for $100 million in each year of the biennial budget. So asking for $200 million. $50 million was included of the governor. So we're asking for $100 million on top of that in the first year of the budget and $100 million in the second year. So putting $250 million towards the project. That's one of the biggest requests from the city. There's certainly a significant number of other requests from the city, a lot of it really focused on public education. And it is my understanding that the General Assembly members, the House and Senate, are really interested in funding K-12 projects and programs, a lot of it related to the JLARC study and the underfunding of schools. So we'll have to see. Important conversation on budget is really the drying up, as they say, of the federal dollars, the COVID federal relief dollars. The last round has to be spent by September of 2025. And so the General Assembly is really back into the game of only spending their own money and not using unspent federal money to fill some budget holes. We're seeing decreased revenues, although the last revenue numbers we got continued to be higher than forecast. And then the forecast budget that the governor introduced does have a built-in forecast of a mild recession in the first year of the budget. So there's a lot of things that indicate conservative approach to funding. But I know that it is certainly the Democrats in both the House and Senate have indicated that K-12 priorities and spending priorities of the localities will be important. So we'll see. Other budget priorities too, but that's the largest one for the city of Richmond, and certainly a top priority as well. With that, I will dig into some of the key legislation that the city initiated. And so these were the city council and the administration. So Mayor Stoney's office worked together to determine where do we want to file legislation. And so when I talk about priority bills, these are the ones that have been initiated by the delegation on the city's behalf. And obviously talk charter, so I won't get into that. We had a few school crossing and traffic flow. Obviously, I have heard from every member of the city council, and I meet one-on-one with each of them every year. And I know you all have called Councilor Jordan about this, is slowing traffic and speed cameras, and how we can use how can we slow traffic in ways that don't need additional police? Because frankly, we're really across the Commonwealth, particularly in Richmond, really struggling to fill those positions. And so Delegate Jones had, and Delegate Carr had a bill that would have, at VCU in particular, where we've had some really tragic, horrible incidents with pedestrians, created school zones in higher ed. And then Delegate Jones also had a bill that would allow speed cameras at the authority of the local government wherever they chose to establish. Currently in Virginia, it's just school zones and work zones. Unfortunately, in the House, those bills continued. The speed cameras everywhere continued. The pedestrian safety bill, which was the higher ed bills, those were left in committee. Continuing does mean, and I do believe, I talked to the chair of the subcommittee, she really wants to work on this and figure a way forward to give localities some tools. It won't be this year, but hopefully we'll be able to come back next year. The pedestrian safety for VCU that would create these higher ed institutions as school zones, which would then allow cameras, but also some additional traffic slowing and pedestrian safety programs. Senator Bagby has that for the city in the Senate. It is actually advancing on a very party line vote. And so with Democratic majorities, we're feeling pretty good that we might get that bill across to the House. Of course, we've seen the identical bill in the House, but Delegate Jones and Delegate Carr had those bills left in committee. And so looking and talking with the city about some possibility, if we take out the speed camera section of that and we still allow a school zone minus speed cameras, is that something that would really help at VCU? So we need to work that out between now and when the Senate bill hopefully comes across. So those were our kind of traffic flow bills. Another one, a bill that seems to be the one gun bill, we're getting an indication of that the governor will sign, and that, again, getting lots of indication of that. Again, Delegate Jones had a bill that would prohibit auto sears. Glock switches is what they're known as. His bill he's just done a really great job patroning that bill, carrying it through, getting really good advocates on behalf of the city as well. And the police chief in particular came and testified to that bill and just did an extraordinary job. The subcommittee is the firearms subcommittee. It's a tough crowd, as you can probably imagine, but even the NRA remained neutral on the bill. And so that bill was able to report out of that committee and pass the House. And it has passed the House. Oh, it's on, Ralph, it passed the House? It passed the House. I have it on third read, but this is a report from Friday, so I apologize. So that one's coming over to the Senate. And again, getting indication that this may be the gun bill that the governor signs. And so again, Richmond initiated bills grabbing headlines. And so a really good one there. We had a bill on affordable housing. Delegate Carr had this bill. This was to add Richmond to the list of localities that are allowed to take some additional steps around mandating when housing is built, putting in these affordable housing units. And Richmond, there's 7 localities currently allowable by law. This is something the General Assembly does from time to time. They pick and choose where things can and can't happen. We call it the Christmas tree effect, like we throw lights on a Christmas tree. We tried last year to have the Christmas tree removed and say any locality can. That did not proceed. This session, we're like, let's go back at it and just try to add Richmond. That bill is oftentimes opposed by some of the groups that have a good following and a good ability to turn votes their way. And so ultimately that bill has not moved forward. We were trying to get a compromise on it. So the House version of the bill that Delegate Carr filed on behalf of the city was actually stricken from the docket because we couldn't get, which meant it was never heard. There is a Senate version that Senator Jeremy McPike has. It is the bill that Delegate Carr had last year that allows this opportunity for all. So we are working on the Senate side to try to get that bill forward. The same groups who opposed the House version of the bill will certainly oppose it when it comes over here, and they are opposing it in the Senate. And so working really hard to try to get that legislation across the finish line. So while it's not the Delegate Carr's bill, it would still allow the city of Richmond, if we can get it passed and signed, to take advantage of those opportunities. So again, while the Richmond initiated bill is not moving forward, we do still have a vehicle to give Richmond this opportunity and are working that. The other key legislation, which actually was on the floor today, Dolores McQuinn. So Delegate McQuinn, who, this is usually a surprise to folks when they hear it. We had redistricting and elected folks to new House districts and Senate districts based on how they were drawn. Delegate McQuinn is actually does not represent the city of Richmond anymore. So she's not part of our delegation, as we say. Although when I said something like that to her in a meeting, I got, if anyone's ever been around, and we all adore Delegate McQuinn, she let me know Richmond is always on her mind and heart. And so we took full advantage of that. And actually, because of some bill limits, and this was one we added in, and Delegate Jordan, I think this came out of your district. Delegate McQuinn has a bill that would allow localities, including Richmond, to apply civil penalties for demolition of historic properties. And actually, this is one of the bills. It will open it to all localities. Again, this is a Christmas tree bill. Up until this point, certain localities are allowed. This bill, again, had a really positive response in subcommittee. In fact, it was so loved that the mayor of Leesburg asked if we could amend the bill to include some things they wanted. But frankly, we had conversations at the council level and with the administration. At that point, the bill had passed full committee and was headed to the floor. And we're like, you know what, get your own bill, Leesburg, next session. So again, getting a lot of really good feedback on that. That one should pass the House to vote to pass tomorrow and will come over to the Senate. And so Delegate McQuinn will carry that bill on the other side. And I think I'm running through my list to make sure. I think that those school zone, and you all talk charter. So those are the priority legislation pieces. What I will tell you is as bills are progressing through the chambers, both sides, we get updates. And by we, I mean the folks who are on the ground every day in the General Assembly. We get updates from the city and questions from the council members, like, where are we on this bill? Where are we on this bill? Just today, got a notification from some folks in the administration around a House bill related, and it's an affordable housing bill, but it's the methodology that the assessor needs to use. So that sometimes the titles of the bill will get you because it's an affordable housing bill, but it's how the properties are being assessed and the inability of localities to really get to the bottom line assessments because it's related to some income. It would require folks to disclose their incomes. The city, we got word today, wants to oppose that bill. And so that's the kind of thing that is happening, you know, making sure we're taking care of the city's priorities. We are tracking on behalf of the city it may be about 350 bills right now. We are removing from our tracker the bills that fail to advance. That's a complicated process sometimes because there's so many at this point in session kind of falling into that category, but we are keeping the members of the administration, the city council updated with those lists. They do have live links, Councilor Jordan, so I want to make sure we're when you get those, you know, certainly feel free to share those or make them available to your constituents as well so they can follow along because action is happening fast, but the live links will take you to directly where the bill is at that point in time so you can get updates on that. And then I think that those are my big ones for now. I know Airbnb is a big issue. I know for the second district in particular, there are some legislative initiatives being moved forward by the short-term rental industry. One Senator Bagby does have. It has been. I see. Thank you for sharing that, Sven. It did have a substitute. It got a lot of heat, and the senator took a lot of heat when it first appeared in the system. He did work with stakeholders to put a substitute forward. It currently does the ordinance that exists in the city of Richmond it would not be impacted by this legislation, except changing the ordinance would have to then meet the requirement of this law. And so there is definitely a step into local control and local authority. And so again, that bill is moving through the Senate. It's on the floor of the Senate now. It has been narrowly kind of ticking along. The bill leapt out in full committee just from the timing of it. There had been a couple of local authority bills that had come up that some folks on the committee were kind of passionate about in the Senate. And they didn't like so many local governments lining up to speak against the bills. And so it was one of the last ones to come through right before they had to hurry up and get to caucus. And so I do think a couple of its votes, I think that one came out of full committee with 11 yes votes, which is way more than any of us would have guessed. I think part of it was solely the result of its positioning on the docket. So we'll see how that continues to advance. There are a couple of other bills that address ADUs and some other pieces like that. There's also bills on the reverse side in the short-term rental space that would require registries at the Department of Taxation that the short-term rental industry are vehemently opposed to. And so there's certainly bills on both sides of this issue, but certainly we're tracking those really closely. I'm trying to, and I apologize for any other questions. I'm happy to answer anything. And I know there were some other issues you raised important to the second district, Councilor Jordan, so I'm happy to answer any of those questions.
Thank you. Yes. And just so everyone understands sort of the background on the short-term rental bill we're talking about. And Kathy, we probably spent almost the entire last year talking about ADUs and short-term rentals.
Yes.
Every single meeting. So the bill that Senator Bagby had carried forward would say that localities cannot limit short-term rental uses in ADUs, auxiliary dwelling units. So if you had a granny flat in a locality, didn't want short-term rentals in your neighborhood for some reason, they would have no say over being able to prohibit them. And our position in general as a city is always to fight for local control. We don't want the General Assembly to tell us what we can and cannot do, what's appropriate for our city. And that's usually a sentiment that's shared by all the other localities. So that is what we're tracking. And if anyone who clicked on our legislative agenda, one of our, a refrain every year is we want to protect local control. And that goes for any number of topics and certainly short-term rental regulations. We want to be able to control short-term rentals locally. So I really appreciate that. down and dirty recap. Kathy, does anyone have a question for Ms. Berger?
And I will add, if I can, while folks are teeing up questions, that local authority, I appreciate that you said it's not just in the short-term rental space. Local government authority, every year we get tons and tons of bills on that. This year is just the uptick is extraordinary on the number of fronts local governments are fighting on, and at the same time fighting on behalf of some of the authorities we'd like to be granted because we need them in our localities in order to provide affordable housing or, slow down our traffic to keep our pedestrians safe. And so it's this weird push-pull, but it's been a real uptick in the number of bills specific to local control and authority for sure.
And then just a programming note for everybody, because we are later in the evening, and I think we can trust everyone that has hung with us through an hour and 20 minutes. Everyone can now unmute yourself as you see fit as well. So if you have a question, just go ahead and do that, or you can still drop it in the chat. Kathy, could you speak a little bit to, I know one issue that Second District constituents have definitely been following and are passionate about is sort of urban forestry related legislation. And I know that Delegate Carr had a great bill on that.
Yeah, you probably got me on the one bill of hers that I know the least about, but it is on our tracker for sure. We track all of the bills that our delegation files. And again, this is one of those bills that people don't think of an urban setting and forestry working together or necessitating through legislation the ability for cities to do that kind of work. I cannot tell you right now where the bill is, but I will send an update when we finish this meeting. I will send an email, Councilor Jordan, to you and Sven with a link to the bill and an update on its location. But it's such an interesting bill again, because Christmas tree effect, and we want to make sure that when we're looking at forestry, we're also including our more urban areas and making sure we're giving the same authority to them, again, to the local control piece, but we're not Christmas treeing and selecting those areas where legislators believe you have a need for forestry, but we're making sure we're taking care of our urban areas as well. So I will send a link to that. So my apologies for my vagueness on answer on exactly where the bill is, but I will send a link as soon as we finish up.
Awesome. I
Right.
appreciate that. And just for awareness for folks, this is a bill that would, as Kathy described, add Richmond to a list of localities, I think all in Northern Virginia right now, that are authorized to be able to require the preservation of trees during the development process. And so that's something that, we've advocated for year after year, and Councilor Jordan has submitted a letter of support for to the committee of jurisdiction where that was considered.
Yes, a lot going on. It's exciting to be the capital city. We're right here in the action, and I always encourage folks to get involved down the General Assembly, contact your delegates, go down there, advocate in person, get connected with a group that is aligned with whatever it is that you're passionate about. They usually have lobby days, but there's a lot going on right now. Kathy, thank you for sharing some of your evening with us.
Absolutely. And I will also say that we're all here in Richmond, but schedules are tough. Both the House takes online, both the House and Senate take online testimony. It started during COVID, and there are some good things. We take advantage of the good things we discovered during COVID, like these Zoom meetings, for instance. So if there's a bill you care a whole heck of a lot about, and again, you can find the links. Councilor Jordan, feel free to post the bill links. You can sign up to speak on behalf of a bill or in opposition to a bill. And so, and they bring you into the committee room, they turn on the Zoom cameras, and you get your opportunity to speak. So I encourage you to get engaged, take advantage to your location, but also know there are other ways to engage and, find the group you want to support and come to their lobby day too. Legislators want to hear from you.
100%. Thank you so much. Okay, well, we have about 7 minutes left before what we were scheduling as our cutoff time for the meeting, 7:30. And at this point, I think I will just go through some second district, general, updates here, and then take questions and answers. So the first thing I wanted to remind everyone, if you're not on a newsletter, I'm guessing you probably are if you know about this meeting, but there are a lot of boards and commission opportunities right now. And just to name them top to bottom, Urban Forestry Commission, that's a new one that we fought really hard for. We also have the History and Culture Commission. We've had some second district folks apply to that already. Thank you so much. We also have an opening for the the Aging and Disability Services Advisory Board. And we have a fabulous representative already. looking for more folks to get engaged. And this is how, one of the reasons I got involved in local politics. I was on the Green City Commission and I didn't get on the first time. And if you don't get on through one of these, openings, you can still go to these meetings, volunteer, get on committee. It's a great opportunity to get back to the city and learn a little bit more about how our government works. So in other news, we talked a lot about meals tax and finance issues. Those are things that are at the forefront of city council administration that we're working on. Diamond District also is, on the front burner. We had a closed session in our meeting on Monday with updates, and unfortunately, closed session means I cannot share the content of that meeting, but things are moving forward. I had a really good meeting with the design team of the stadium. I think folks will be excited how that's looking, and progress marches on. Let's see, in other news, DPU, we really appreciate Director Bingham and her team. Yes, they have been plagued with some issues, particularly billing issues and overbilling. They are working to address that, and I always appreciate that. They are very forthright when they realize something is askew. They own up to it, and they're trying diligently to work through that with limited staff to manage that cleanup. But there's some articles that Sven can drop in the chat if you want to learn more about that. Obviously, the most recent one was the meter reading on water came in higher than it was supposed to. So you may have gotten a water bill that looked out of scale for what you're used to. You will probably be getting a letter, if you haven't already, from the city explaining how that occurred and what they're doing to rectify the situation. So if things do not look right, reach out to DPU. And then if you are not getting a timely response, contact our office so that we can help re-escalate it. Other things that are going on, Cultural Heritage Stewardship Plan. Now that had been called the Cultural Resources Management Plan, but based on a lot of comments and a lot of outreach, I think from the 2nd District, we've had really good participation. Thank you. Anyway, they have renamed that the Cultural Heritage Stewardship Plan. The comments are due by February 15th. So if you've been engaging with that and want to continue you can do so till February 15th. If you haven't, it's not too late. Get on there. This is, looking at how we represent our history of the city. And it's exciting. Also budget, we're in the early process. Mayor presents his budget into March, and something that if Mariah is still on from the school board, schools and the city, we both went through collective bargaining for the first time. And as a result of that, our budgets are looking a lot different than they have in the past. Now, the good news is that we are, our staff and, teachers are getting so much needed raises and, improvements to their workplace. The challenge with that is it is going to be a new line item in our budgets that we are going to have to make room for. So I feel like this is going to be a lean budget year. We are taking care of people, and we've been doing that. I'm very proud to say for the last several years, taking care of right-sizing our staff's salaries so that we can retain and recruit, the best. We want to be an employer of choice. Participatory budgeting. This is something that will not impact this current budget, but it'll be the year after. And each district, I believe, gets $3 million. Is that correct, Sven? So we will talk a lot more about that as the process starts to unfold. But, so the overall goal is to bring residents into the budgeting process and see what their priorities are and help sort of, pull back the curtain on how do you make these decisions when it comes to limited dollars. Lastly, I would say if you have not received our mailer, Sven can drop in the PDF of it. You should have gotten it in the mail around Christmas time, and we'll be sending out a spring one, probably in a couple months. But lots of information on that, and appreciate everyone sticking with me. We got a good solid dirty dozen here at the bitter end. With that, I will open it up to questions. Thank you so much for everyone for being here tonight.
And just a reminder, you can go ahead and unmute yourself at this point. We're amongst friends.
Hopefully.
And if,
Afternoon, this is Mariah. I'm
Hi.
back. I heard you said Mariah. So what you were stating is that the budget is going to be lean. It's going to be a lean budget towards our budget. Was that what you were stating?
I think overall, the city, there's not going to be as much room to bring in new things because the city is, had collective bargaining with our own workers, with, public safety, and to address the pay raises they want. That's going to take up a significant chunk of our budget in a way that, we didn't have last year, even though we were steadily trying to increase raises every year. This is just a whole nother bump. That's going to be a large number. And I think what I heard from Superintendent Camrus when he presented his budget to us is that you guys have a similar situation with your collective bargaining.
That is correct.
Mhm. Yeah.
And Ms. White, I think Kathy also spoke to this a little bit in her General Assembly update. The state is dealing with this, but so are localities. We got a little bit spoiled by all the federal relief dollars through ARPA over the last couple fiscal years. And as we hit that cliff of having to spend down all that money, a lot of that is already programmed. And so we, are doing some very exciting initiatives, building new community centers, things like that. But that money is going to be drying up here shortly. So that's kind of another big picture implication for the budget.
That is, it's gonna drop real quick.
Yeah. And I mean, I would encourage everyone, make sure you're lobbying for all of these school related bills, because the more money we can get out of the state for RPS, then, there's less that the city has to make up the difference on.
And y'all, I know we are spamming you with links and resources and everything else. But
Links
just a
for
reminder,
everybody in the chat.
this whole thing will be recorded and uploaded to our YouTube. If something was a particular interest to you and you want to go ahead and rewind, or if you want to share it with somebody else who wasn't able to make it.
Yes. All right. Well, it is 7:30. Thank you so much for spending your evening with us. You're our super constituents, obviously. And Mariah, thank you for joining us as a participant. I think all our other presenters have logged off, but always
Well,
count on you. Thank you so much. Mr. Ali, thank you so much. And we're really glad to have you at the city.
Thank you.
And appreciate you being here.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
Thank you. Good night.